NFC East, Washington Commanders. What we got?
Best case scenario is Commanders offense is the best in the NFL and they make the Super Bowl. And then defense, worst case scenario is the defense is too volatile to help the offense. And I think the defense is very much a Dan Quinn defense where they rely on the chaos plays. You think about the Frankie Louvu, like it's the Moon Knight random bullshit go meme where it's like we're just gonna do stuff and it's either gonna work or it's gonna bite us in the ass. And I think the defense's volatility, it leads to some stretches of really good play, but it can also lead to some really, really bad moments. And the worst case scenario is that volatility just doesn't help the offense out through some lulls where, like offensively, Jaden Daniels was great last season. There were you worry a little bit about some of the regression, some of the turnover stuff, he was able to be really good without turning the ball over. And I think that's a really important thing for a young quarterback to have. Can it consistently stay? That's left to be seen. But if it does, the best case scenario is this offense is the best unit in the NFL in terms of what they're able to do in the run game. You keep Terry McLaurin around, and you just have too many questions for defenses to answer at a certain point in time.
Yeah, best case scenario is more of last year and maybe less one-score games and more like let's run some 4-minute here type games. Worst case scenario, the one-score games turn into losses. The defense still not up to snuff from a talent and youth standpoint. Quinn got so much out of that unit last year. It's like what you just said. It was very much a Dan Quinn unit. They were relying on, what'd you say, the Moon Knight plays? The moon haunts you. That's what Dan Quinn says into his headset. That was a Marvel Rivals joke, Mike Renner. I know you're out of the game, but some of us are still in it. Yeah, that's what it is. And I mean, those blitz packages with those linebackers in the A gap, like I have nightmares thinking about it as a guard because you're sitting there with a 300-pound 3 technique in your face. And then, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu are right up there, just, in your face. It's a nightmare. But worst case scenario, defense can't hold up in the big games. Jaden gets you to the big games. Look, there's no bad scenarios involving Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think we all kind of know that the Washington, they did stuff defensively. There's nothing you can point to where you're like, yeah, that's for sure going to work out. It's all kind of like it could, but it could also be the exact same D we saw a year ago. That was, the only one of the bottom 12 run defenses in the NFL to make the playoffs. I think you're playing with fire if that's the case again this year, if you really still struggle to stop the run. Dallas Cowboys, what do you got?
The best case scenario for the Dallas Cowboys actually is the offense taking pressure off the quarterback and you're just competitive in 2025. Worst case scenario is you can't run the ball and your defense can't stop anything. And when it comes to taking the pressure off the quarterback, I think with what Brian Schottenheimer wants to do, what he did in terms of his coordinator hiring Clayton Adams is they want to run the ball more. They want to be effective running the football. Clayton Adams was the offensive line coach in Arizona. They ran a lot of gap scheme, a lot of pin pull. I thought the Cardinals run game was super fun. And so you're bringing it to Dallas and you have an offensive line where it's like, hey, you can move some guys with this offensive line. The hope is you take some of the pressure off of Dak Prescott. I think that's where the Cowboys offense really struggled last year. And in the Mike McCarthy era was every mistake Dak Prescott made, it wasn't just it's a bad throw, incompletion. Bad throw, interception, chaos, leading first take tomorrow morning. Is Dak Prescott good enough? But that's not a sustainable way to run an NFL offense. You want to create an offense where the margin of error for your quarterback is so wide where there's a bad throw, we can overcome it. We can maximize how good you are, minimize the mistakes. And I think with what this offense did and bring in George Pickens, which is a really fun compliment to CeeDee Lamb in terms of the explosiveness, they haven't had a guy like George Pickens in that offense since the best of Michael Gallup. And I think with what they want to do, with all the 12 personnel, with the physicality running the ball, you see a lot more downfield play action shots from this team. So if you can just get some of the pressure off of Dak Prescott to be perfect on every single throw, you can make this team pretty sneaky competitive. Of course, this all is hinging on if Micah Parsons is still around, but if he's still around, this team can be sneaky competitive with that formula.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine. The only scenario I'd imagine that'd be more exciting for Dallas Cowboys fans is if Deion Sanders was the head coach, George Pickens was a receiver opposite CD, but that didn't happen. That's water under the bridge. I'll say this: Dak Prescott, highly underrated, underappreciated, and somebody who gets talked about in the wrong way more often than not. Because if you've watched him play the game of football, he's been tough. He's taken a beating. And to your point, the scheme hasn't lended itself to being quarterback friendly. You've got some quarterback friendly elements now in this offense. You talked about the offensive line, and it's something that I fell in love with when I first started playing football, was that Cowboys offensive line. Well, it went away. We've seen the old heads, guys that are younger than me, so they're really young men like Zach Martin, come and go. Now there's this void. Who is going to be the next group? Are they going to step up? We saw Guyton go down with an injury. Tyler Smith is a great player. Cooper Beebe is a guy who's got some experience at the center position now. We've got so much youth. Take the pressure off of Dak. I think that's a great, great way to go about it. But the worst case scenario is George Pickens does George Pickens, and it's just CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott out there.
Yeah, I do think it is interesting that the Cowboys, they kind of turned into the analytics darlings here. They're going to be interesting to track for that reason alone, in that they have loaded up on corners, loaded up on pass rushers, loaded up on receivers. They have the worst running back room in the NFL. They have no one that can stop the run on their defense whatsoever. Like they are going to go, they have kind of gone all in on all the things that matter for a passing game. And so we'll see. We'll see how it works out. But I do think that the mismatch between how their offensive line is built and then how their running back room is built is throwing me. Like, this is not a running back room that's built to run behind, which should be, a very imposing in terms of physically what they can do from double teams, movement perspective, like you touched on, JP, that these guys aren't built to maximize it. Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams, they kind of went off a name and not based off of what we see from those guys late, unfortunately. All right, let's get to the last two teams here, and then we get out. New York Giants. I'm interested to hear your best case scenario, because I have some takes on the New York Giants that I feel crazy for, but I want to hear what you think could be the best outcome for this team.
My best case scenario is you feel really good about your defense and Jackson Dart to leave this season. Worst case scenario is you just don't feel good about Jackson Dart in any capacity. This defense, quietly, kind of fun. Can be pretty damn good. I love what they did in the secondary. I think adding Paulson Adebo, who has been one of my underrated favorite players to watch at corner. Drew Phillips is awesome at nickel. Tyler Nubin's really fun. You add Javon Holland. That defensive line is going to be incredibly nasty up front. You can see games where hey, if we can just hold the opposing offense to 12 points, maybe we can get something out of the offense. And then the best case scenario, whenever Jackson Dart plays, you feel confident in knowing that he is your guy. Regardless of what happens with Brian Daboll at the end of this season, you're confident in Jackson Dart being your quarterback of the future. Worst case scenario is you're just not confident in that, not at all, and you're going into another season where you might need another quarterback. So it truly hinges on if you feel confident in Jackson Dart, and if this defense is going to be really good. I don't want to say really good, but if they are good enough to be okay, we can hinge our profile on a couple things. Defense being really good, we just get enough from Malik Neighbors. We get enough from whoever's throwing him the ball.
Best case scenario, that front seven or that front four becomes a unit that can carry a football team and win games for you, not just a strong unit. I'm talking about creating turnovers, extra possessions, points off of strip sacks. This unit will be for real, okay? This is the type of unit that makes me happy that I'm not playing anymore. And the other best case scenario is Jackson Dart trots out there eventually and gets better every single time we see him. Worst case scenario, Jackson Dart trots out there and quickly has to be trotted back off of there. That's the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I think just a rotation on the quarterbacks where it's one guy's in, he sticks, next guy in. That's obviously something that's very plausible given that quarterback room. But my best case, I think this team could make the playoffs. As crazy as it sounds, I think they have, one, insanely good defensive line. I think it could be the best defensive line in the NFL, given, if Abdul Carter looks like Jared Verse did last year, I think it's the best defensive line in the NFL, and obviously as a prospect, like even if he's just as Will Anderson was, I still think it could be the best defensive line in the NFL. And then you have a defense that's good enough to kind of win games on their own. And then offensively, you have a kind of one-man wrecking crew in Malik Neighbors who could just be instant offense, who could be like a 1,600-yard, double-digit touchdowns that, the rest of it may not be great, but he can take screens and go 50+ and give you a shot in the arm when it's needed, and that the offense could look serviceable in that. So that, to me, is best case. But the one thing I'm worried about is that your DC is Shane Bowen. You don't have a DC who I think a lot of people would say is like this, on the cutting edge of the top DCs in the NFL. You have all this talent, but is it going to be put to the best use? I think is the biggest question mark that I have with this football team. And if it's not, well, we'll be looking at a brand new coaching staff next season. All right, last team, your Super Bowl champs, Philadelphia Eagles. Best and worst case scenario.
Best case scenario is a Super Bowl repeat, and worst case scenario, I put the new play caller makes the offense inefficient. And that's going to be really hard to do considering everything that you have on the offensive side of the ball. But we have seen this offense sort of be inefficient at times with a new play caller. And I'm really intrigued by what happens with Nick Sirianni this year, because last year he took a little more of a hands-off approach to the offense. That is something that he talked about extensively before last season, which is he wants to take more of a game management role. But with Kevin Patullo now running the offense, does he have more of a say? Does he have more of input on game day of what the offense looks like? Is he going to be taking on too much? Is there going to be too many cooks in that offensive room? But best case scenario, this is still the best roster in the NFL. You still have a few of the best, I guess you have the best aces in the hole in any team in the NFL, which is that defense and that offensive line, and you win the Super Bowl again. That is what this team is built to do.
Best case scenario, Super Bowl repeat. Worst case scenario, NFC championship game. I mean, I feel like that's not ludicrous to say.
Oh, no.
Oh, we got Mikey in. Mikey's in the space-time continuum. He's in the Bermuda Triangle right now. Everybody, moment of silence for Mike while he figures out his GPS.
Big Eagles are trying to shut him down.
Howie Roseman is.
Howie Roseman's trying to get after him.
Yeah.
Every time I bump my desk, I gotta get a better setup here. But I'll just tie Bowen up with this. Philadelphia Eagles. The one thing that can sink them is I just think the thing that kind of sunk them in 2023, I think it's just like infighting. Even AJ Brown, you saw him last year, reading the book. If there gets to be problems in that locker room that don't get solved, that then make their way out into the football field, guys unhappy, that's really it. This roster is foolproofed. I love what they did along their offensive line, because there's no 2023. I think what sunk them also was that problem at right guard. The offensive line was not the dominant we saw last year. Yeah, they lost Mekhi Becton, but they have basically 5 different guys who could play that right guard position, and you think you'd be okay with whichever one wins that job. So, yeah, the Eagles are a very easy high and low projection here. They're going to be damn good.